Hello and welcome to this episode of Morning Market Call. My name is Mason Chenn and I'm your host today. And today we have two second-year MBA students, Chris Farnsworth and Benjamin Rich, who both interned this summer at Proctor and Gambel. They're here today to tell us a little bit about their experiences and to give us a flavor of what their summer was like. So first question for you guys, how did you find your internship? Maybe we can start with Ben.
Yeah, well, for me it was probably a little bit more difficult. I hadn't decided yet whether I was going to do finance or the OBHR track, the organizational behavior track. And so one of the common themes, regardless, was P&G. I'd looked at them before I came in, so they were always on my radar. And luckily, they came through campus. It made it really easy. But there was a lot of networking involved going on over the summer. That helped me understand maybe some good questions to ask and to be a little bit smarter about how I was going to approach getting into the company. And so luckily it was just overlap to be short.
Okay. And what about you, Chris? What was your experience like?
So coming into the program, HR was a new function for me, and so I frankly didn't know very much about it. And my initial criteria for what companies I was interested in was I knew I liked tech, and I knew where I wanted to live. So it was geography and tech, and P&G didn't really hit either of those criteria for me.
So Cincinnati.
It was not really high on my list compared to some of the other options I looked at. And as I talked more to recruiters, because I felt like I had a lot more to learn and I had a big learning curve with HR, I was very thorough in my research and I talked to as many people as I could at all these companies. Yeah. And the more I talked to them, the more I was impressed with what I was hearing about P&G. Even throughout the process, my priorities were on these tech companies, and P&G was just kind of, something I was interested in, but wasn't really high on my list. And as opportunities panned out, some of these other tech companies that I thought I was really high on didn't end up being really high on me. And then I had opportunities with other companies, and so I guess the biggest takeaway I took, and in retrospect, P&G was a fantastic place for me. It was the right place for me. So in retrospect, the takeaway was cast a wide net, keep an open mind, because I didn't know very much about the companies, and it turns out that the one that I didn't place high on my list turned out to be the best option.
So you mentioned geography was important to you. So how did you guys like Cincinnati?
Question.
Well, for me, I loved it. I mean, I had my whole family there, 3 kids, ages 3, 5, and 7, with my wife. We had a great time. I mean, the great thing about Cincinnati is the city itself is great for families, zoos, parks, a lot of wide open area. It's very wooded. Outside the city itself, the subdivisions are fantastic. You have Kings Island, which is a fantastic amusement park. You've got one of the best amusement parks 4 hours north, Cedar Point. And then you have all of the surrounding cities. Louisville's 2 hours away. You have Indianapolis, which is an hour and a half. They've got a great kids museum up there. And then just around the surrounding area, great if you're a member of the church. There's a lot of church history around in the areas. New York's really just a 9-hour drive away, so a weekend trip isn't out of the question. DC's only 9 hours away, I think. So there's a lot surrounding the city itself. We loved it. We were able to get out and do a lot of different things and really enjoy the city.
And what about you, Chris?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it exceeded my expectations. I didn't expect much because I didn't know anything about it, and I was comparing it with the Bay Area and some places in Texas that I was interested in. But really, I came away really being impressed with what Cincinnati has to offer, especially, like you said, it's really family friendly. The schools there are fantastic. Cost of living is really low, and it's close to a lot of things. So I could go on, but I think you summed it up pretty well.
Yeah, it sounds like Cincinnati's a really great place. I've been there before, and my favorite place in Cincinnati, in the Cincinnati area, is a place called Jungle Jim's. It's a grocery store that has pretty much any kind of food you could imagine.
Nice.
So how were the people at Procter and Gambel? It's a big corporation, obviously, lots of different types of people from kind of all over the world. But how did you guys find the people to be?
For me, that was one of the big draws to Procter and Gambel. The more I talked to the people and the more I got a sense for what kind of people work there, the more I felt like, wow, this is a great fit, and this is the kind of people I want to work around. I compare it to the MBA program here in that, I think most of us were, in our previous work experience, we were all top performers and kind of maybe the top echelon of people within those groups. Suddenly we come into an MBA program where everyone is like that, and it's a little overwhelming because you feel like, can I compete with such a high quality group of people? Procter and Gambel is very rigorous in their selection process, and they're really looking for people who are very bright, very motivated, very creative, and so it was a little bit intimidating coming into that. But for me, it was exciting being able to work around people like that because it kind of helps you raise your game a little bit. So I think, to sum it up, I would say that they're people that are very intelligent, very motivated, and just really, really good people.
That's great.
And to just kind of add to that, I think Chris did a great job of summing up the type of people that they have there. But the other thing that I really appreciated was the reach out that people had within that organization. There's, the company has some what they call purpose, values, and principles, PVPs, and it's all about doing the right thing for the customer, for the people around you. And there's the people really going out of their way to make sure that you're successful. They really were invested in your success, and I thought it made it possible to really be successful in that organization.
Okay, that's great. So what types of work or what types of projects did they have you guys involved in this summer? Maybe we can ask Ben this question, then I've got another question for Chris.
Yeah, for me there were, they had 4 projects that I was a part of, and they were very big projects, very meaty, things that they were real problems with in the company. So for example, one of them was I was in the expatriate and relocation division, and so that anytime an employee moved within the United States or moved from the United States out into a foreign country, we dealt with the moves and the policy behind that, working with the different vendors that helped move our people across. And so there's a lot of relationships that had to be managed. There's a lot of expenses, costs, and so they had me look at a few different projects and how much it costs overall. Were there any cost-cutting opportunities there in this market, and doing that, taking away some of these benefits where the employee is invested and feeling like they might be losing something is an extremely big challenge. And so a lot of projects around that area.
Okay, great. And so Chris, the question I have for you is, what was the biggest challenge of this summer?
I would second what Benjamin said. All the projects were very challenging, very meaty. They give you real work, real real challenges. So that in of itself was a challenge.
Yeah.
For me personally, I had kind of a unique summer. So there were a lot of personal challenges in the sense that we had a baby in the middle of the summer, right in the middle of an internship.
Yeah, that's got to be pretty stressful.
It was a little bit challenging.
Okay.
And all things considered, the best solution was to have my family stay here, where my wife had a strong support network and a lot of support. So my family stayed here while I went to Cincinnati.
Okay.
Which is not ideal, and for the record, I don't recommend that for anyone who can avoid it. But that being said, Procter and Gambel really stepped up to the plate, and they went out of their way and showed me that that you hear about it being kind of a family-friendly place, and they showed me that. They made it possible for me to fly back every other weekend. I got to take a 2-week break to be home for the delivery of the baby. And then they flew my wife out at the end of it to spend some time there. So it was big to them that I had a good experience, not just within the workplace, but with my family as well. And one thing that they often said was, I talk about how difficult it was to be away from my family and come into work.
Yeah.
And I heard a lot of people say, at the end of the day, we make soap. And the point that they were making was, what we do here is important, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not at all the most important thing. So
it sounds like culturally it was a really good fit for you and your family and your situation. That's
Definitely.
Great. So 2 final questions. What was the best part of your summer? What was the thing that you enjoyed the most about your time at Procter and Gambel? Start with Ben.
That's great. It's actually an easy one for me. Because I got to work so closely with Chris and develop a good bond there, there's natural BYU ties, but to have us together work across with the other interns and develop some close relationships, we put together a trip to go to Kings Island, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. which is one of the best amusement parks that I have ever been to. We spent 14 hours there from the time that it opened until the time that it closed, and just experience that and ride the Beast, which was definitely the highlight. We rode it 3 different times. Once when the sun was out, could see everything. Another time at twilight where you couldn't see as much. The fireflies coming out of the trees, just enchanting, if you're going to use a word. And then finally at night when you couldn't see anything, going through tunnels, just an incredible experience.
I would second that. It was awesome. Highlight of the summer. I mean, work was great too, and the company was great, but really at the end of the day, it was the people. You know, I mentioned before that was a big draw for me, and that exceeded my expectations. Everyone there, with a few exceptions. Now, by and large, everyone there was awesome, and the BYU network was super strong, and the people even outside of the network were people that they're engaging people, you know, and it was fun, whether we're riding roller coasters together or just, you know, working on projects. It was neat being around them.
That's great. Okay, so here's the final question for you, and this is the hardest question of the afternoon. What's your favorite Proctor and Gambel brand?
It's a tough one. Probably Tide. No, for me it's well, it depends on, you know, it's an interesting question. They asked us on our onboarding day the exact same question. Okay. And the answer that I gave them there was it depends on whether I'm shaving that day. If I'm shaving, it's going to be Gillette, any of their products that I use, or every day it's going to be Old Spice. Okay.
Pampers all the way. We use a lot of Pampers.
Okay.
When I went there, I told them, if you can just pay me in Pampers, that would just cut out the middle process of taking the money to buy Pampers.
So no need for a bonus. You can pay Chris in Pampers.
That's right. My signing bonus is all Pampers.
Recruiters at Proctor and Gambel, take that to the bank. You can pay Chris in Pampers. So, well, there you have it. 2 of our BYU interns, our BYU MBAs, share their experience about Proctor and Gambel. Strong enough for a man, but pH balanced for Benjamin Rich. That wraps it up for our for this episode of Morning Market Call. You can follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or go to morningmarketcall.org.
MMC is brought to you by the Marriott School of Management in association with the Brigham Young University Department of Communications. MMC is made possible by a generous donation from Larry Tasjan and Gary Williams, and is produced by Rhett Weller, Todd Castagna, Mason Chenn, Joel Toby, and Sabrina Beck, with line producing by Beth and Brian Grimmick. For more information, find us on Twitter or at morningmarketcall.org.